So the final shape is here, and with it, we have received a few major new tools to work with in regards to exotic builds. Number one is the Prismatic subclass, which lets us mix and match existing abilities, aspects, and supers in brand new ways. Number two is the Solipsism exotic class item, which combines exotic perks from many Warlock exotics and some exotics from both other classes. And then finally, we have received a few new weapons and exotic armor pieces that open up new build crafting possibilities. Today in this tier list, I'm going to be looking at how every Warlock exotic armor in the game stacks up with Prismatic. Many of these exotics will not be applicable for Prismatic, or any better than they would be on any other class, but for some, Prismatic changes the game. Some of the tiers for this list are outside of the normal good to bad ranking system for the average tier list, so I will explain those as I go. So, bottom tier. Outplayed by exotic class item. These exotics have their most important functionality copied in the bond, and therefore I do not think are worth using standalone when their additional benefits are so light. So, from left to right, we've got Necrotic Grip. The only thing you're missing out on in the exotic bond version of Necrotic Grip is you're not getting bonus airborne effectiveness for the Weapons of Sorrow. Completely superfluous part of the exotic, not necessary at all. Therefore, I do not think it's worth using the base exotic. For the Stag, you're not getting the Rift regeneration part of it, which is a little odd. You're getting the damage resistance. I would have swapped it. The damage resistance you get in the Stag exotic is not great. It's pretty bad in PvP, and it's not great in PvE, considering you have to be standing in one area. I think it would have maybe been better if they had the Rift regeneration aspect available, so that you could combo that with some of the other perks in the exotic bonds, but that's not the case. Either way, I would not take the the Stag for Prismatic. Osmiomancy. As far as I can tell, the only thing you don't get from the bond version of Osmiomancy is second Cold Snap. You're not going to be using Cold Snaps on Prismatic anyway. Basically, what this thing is a better Controverse hold on the bond, and you can use it with Vortex or Storm Grenade. Those would be your two main offensive options. Also works with Threadland Grenade, but... So yeah, I don't think the base exotic is going to be worth using over the bond, especially considering it only works with Cold Snaps. Claws of Ahamkara. Only thing you're not getting is that it gives you Heavy-Handed for free, aka the mod that generates orbs on melee kills. I would never use Claws of Ahamkara for any situation, and I won't be using it on the bond, but the bond is just better. So if you want to use Claws of Ahamkara, no reason not to put it on the bonds. Battle Harmony, and what you're missing out on is the surge that you get when your super is already full. You are getting the super regeneration portion of the exotic on the bond, which was recently buffed. I think that's the better part of the exotic. And I think while Battle Harmony is not a very compelling option by itself, on the bond, when you can get some better options to combo with it, not a terrible choice. Apotheosis. What you're not getting in the bond is the when you cast your super, it tops off your abilities and heals your allies or whatever. This is a part of the exotic nobody cares about anyway, so the bond version is objectively better. Now for these next couple, Starfire and Vesper, it's a little weird because these are two exotics where both halves of their perks connect together in order to make a functional exotic. By removing half of the functionality and putting it on the bond, you kind of just end up with a non-perk. With Starfire, you're getting the grenade regeneration on empowered Rift damage / kills, but you don't get your Rift back when you kill things with grenades. So the loop is disconnected. Probably still better to use it on the bond because Starfire has completely fallen to the wayside since it's been nerfed, but it's not a great choice overall, in my opinion. Vesper of Radius, you're getting the Arc Pulse part of the perk, but not the Rift Regeneration part, which is kind of silly because this exotic is just not good, and the Rift Regeneration part of the exotic is the whole reason you would ever consider using it. because you're using a relatively weak meme effect, but in return you're getting extremely high uptime on your Rift for something like Arc Soul. Can't do that on Prismatic, so I don't know why you'd take it either by itself or on the bond. And then Secant Filaments, what you're missing out on is that you can't stun overloads while you're in your Rift. This is an effect that was relevant when the exotic came out, but it has been 2 years since then, and it is now extremely easy to stun overloads. So this exotic has been rapidly power crept. I think that getting Devour proc on casting an Empowering Rift is an okay ability, and just having that and not the overload is good enough for the bond to be better than it. Now for the next tier, missing functionality / can't use. Number 1 is Baladors. Nothing about this exotic except for the super damage works on Prismatic. So the 2 parts of this exotic are when you cast your Rift while you have Frost Balls, you and your allies get max stacks of the new stasis ability called Frost Armor, which gets you up to around 40% DR in PvE, and 2 surges of stasis damage. You can't do that on Prismatic. You don't have Frost Balls. So instead what you're just getting is the double shatter damage from Winter's Wrath. You have access to Star Eater Scales on Prismatic Warlock, and I cannot imagine why you would ever use this exotic over like a Star Eater Scales Nova Bomb. Sunbracers. You don't have Solar Grenades. Can't use it. Geomags. You don't have Chaos Reach. Can't use it. Phoenix Protocol. You don't have Well. Can't use it. Briarbinds. You don't have Child of the Old Gods. Can't use it. Nothing Manacles. You don't have Scatter Grenades. Can't use it. Controverse Hold. You don't have Chaos Accelerant. You can't use it. Dawn Chorus you can use, but you're not getting the significantly increased super damage from Dawnblade. Maybe one day they'll change this to work it with Song of Flame, but I doubt it. As it stands, you can get the increased Scorch damage and then the melee passive melee regeneration from that Scorch. Not terrible. In theory, you could combo this with some kind of Arcane Needle build where you're using an incandescent weapon to give your Arcane Needles high uptime. But I think that the best build for Prismatic Warlock, as I will get to later, already uses Arcane Needles, and you don't need better regeneration to use it. So I would not recommend taking Dawn Cores for the half functionality that you get on Prismatic. Moving on to the bad tier, we have Prometheum Spurs. So I'm gonna put the tier list aside for a weapon a second, just to talk about this exotic. Daybreak Final Blows create a healing and empowering rift at the target's location. When a solar super is equipped, solar weapon Final Blows grant rift energy. Standing in a rift increases this energy. Final Blows while in a rift consume class ability energy to create a healing and empowering rift at the target's location. This is the most overcomplicated, no reward exotic of all time. If this exotic just made your rift healing and empowering, I doubt anybody would use it. If you didn't have to do anything to get that effect, if it just granted you the double rift, I don't think anybody would use it. But that's not how it works, and you have to go through all this fucking rigmarole to get a shitty effect, and on top of that, it kind of relies on Daybreak. So yeah, this is a bad exotic. Don't use it on Prismatic. Don't use it on anything. Don't use it ever. Boots of the Assembler. You can stand in a rift and it sends orbs to heal your allies. This is one of my most despised exotics in the entire game. It does absolutely nothing for the user if you aren't using Lumina. It's not good. Like, it's just an exotic that's purely designed to help your teammates and not you. And it's not even really good at doing that, as you'll see when I talk about Speaker's Sight later, which I think is just a way better version of this. Speaking about exotics that do nothing to help the person using it, Cenotaph. You are only ever using Cenotaph for one reason, and I can tell you the exact loadout you're running. You are running Well of Radiance, you have Ember of Benevolence, and you are using Divinity. And you're using this exotic to make your teammates' lives more convenient at the expense of having no build for yourself that does literally anything. This exotic is bad in every situation where you are not specifically being a div bitch, and for the life of me, I cannot imagine why Bungie would ever have designed an exotic that does this. Moving on, Swarmers. Swarmers are not great for Prismatic because Threadlings are not great on Prismatic because you don't have access to Facet of Evolution or Thread of Evolution, the fragment on strands that makes your Threadlings deal 33% more damage and also travel farther. That is instrumental to get any kind of Threadling build going. So for that reason, I would not recommend taking Swarmers. Stormdancer's Brace. Getting kills in Storm Trance increases its damage, and it refunds your super energy after it's done. I think up to half. Half is the cap for most super refund exotics. This exotic's bad because Storm Trance is bad. In an ideal universe, this and Crown of Tempest would be combined to one exotic because they occupy the same design space, while neither of them is actually good enough to be useful. So maybe one day, but don't use it on Prismatic. If you really want to damage boost your Storm Trance, you can just use Star Eater Scales on the exotic class item. So there's literally no reason to use this. Lunafaction Boots. These have not been relevant for many years. They increase your reload speed in your rifts. Nobody cares. Nobody's ever using this unless they're min-maxing for raid DPS, and even then I don't think it's seen use for a while. Carnstein Armlets. You kill things, you get passive healing. They got like a nerf recently where they changed it to be, I think, restoration, and it actually ended up being less healing overall. Not good. I don't like these. There are some situations where you can use them, like, with glaives, they're okay, but wouldn't recommend it. Anything melee based on Warlock, really, not good, with like one exception. Sanguine Alchemy. Back in the day, this used to give you wall hacks when you were in a rift. That was the only time anybody ever used it, back when we were doing double primaries and Trials of the Nine. Ever since, it's been getting kills while in a rift extend your rift. Literally, who gives a shit? This thing sucks, don't use it. Winner's Guile. Stacking melee damage bonus from getting melee kills. It's a gimmick exotic. You can use it if you want, but at the end of the day, you're on Warlock and you're not here to melee. That's not what you're doing. You don't have good melees. There's like 2 that actually deal any damage. If you wanted, this could be funny with like a triple Lightning Surge Arcane Needle build on Prismatic, and that is something that you can't do on other Warlock subclasses, but that wouldn't be good, and I wouldn't recommend it. So this is in bad tier. Skull of Dire Hamkara. Refund super energy after getting kills with Nova Bomb. Nova Bomb is a burst damage super, not an ad clear super. It's not good. This exotic has never been good. I wonder if they're ever going to make it not terrible. Wings of Sacred Dawn. You need a solar subclass equipped, or solar super equipped, sorry. And while you're in the air, you have like DR and unflinching, and you're there and you can float around. It's funny. It's not very good. Rain of Fire wins the award for worst weapon exotic of all time, and also most incomplete exotic of all time. This exotic doesn't do anything. It gives you Radiant when you get a kill with a fusion rifle. Okay, and it auto reloads your weapons when you Icarus dodge. Those are 2 decent effects, but they're seemingly randomly 2 different effects that they just put on this exotic for no reason. It seems like it's designed specifically to work with Vex Mythoclass, and even then, like, the most mileage you're getting out of that is a gimmick build in PvP. Radiant gives you anti-barrier, so that's something, but there's a million easier ways to get Radiant, even on Prismatic, so I would not recommend using this. Moving on to the brief middling tier, you've got Chromatic Fire. What this essentially does is it gives a Dragonfly to your kinetic weapons, correlating to your super, that does damage and also debuffs. So if I go into the exotic here, you're looking at Blind on Arc, Scorch on Solar, Weaken on Void, Slow on Stasis, and Sever on Strand. These are some decent debuffs. Like, this is not terrible. But generally speaking, when it comes to subclass verbs, they're easy to come by. Also, like, you're getting Strands and Stasis in your kinetic slot anyway. So in that case, why not just use a Strand or Stasis weapon? So this one is okay. It can be fun to combo with certain weapons, but it's not fantastic. Fallen Sunstar, it's just a mid. It's a mid exotic. It's mid on Arc. It's mid on Prismatic. It's probably worse on Prismatic than it is on Arc because it's significantly harder to generate ionic traces. There are ways to do it. You can use Delicate Tomb and you can use Cold Heart. And you are then getting super energy back for, or rather, ability energy back for abilities that don't necessarily need to be Arc. But, you know, it's whatever. Moving up to decent tier, Eye of Another World. Increases your passive regeneration for all your abilities. Eye of Another World is never the best pick for any subclass, but it's never the worst pick. It's okay. Verity's Brow. This is one of the only Warlock exotics that is present in the exotic class item that I feel like is still worth using on its own. The functionality that you're not getting with the class exotic is that the passive grenade regeneration in combination with the increased grenade damage. And I think that is enough to justify using Verity's Brow. You'd be mainly using it with Void would probably be the best choice for Prismatic, but it's something. Nezarec Sin. Passive regeneration to all your abilities from just getting Void kills. This can be Void weapon or ability kills, so you don't need to be on any kind of Void abilities if you don't want to. It's decent. Not a bad choice. Crown of Tempests. Currently, if you get a kill with an Arc ability, you're getting the benefit that Crown of Tempests provides to all your abilities, regardless if they are Arc or not. I am unsure if this is intended. If it is intended, then this is an okay exotic to run. I still don't think it's that great, but it's something. It gives you a higher amount of passive regeneration than Nezarec does, and it gives you regeneration to your super, which Nezarec does not. So that's something. Moving up to great tier, we have Getaway Artist. So Getaway Artist is the only way that you can get access to Arc Soul on Prismatic Warlock. You eat your Arc Grenade, you get Amplified and an Arc Soul. In PvE, I think this is a gimmick. I don't think any kind of minion build is ever worth running in PvE unless you're just doing fun fuck around stuff in low level content where you can use literally anything. But in PvP, I think there's an argument to be made here. You can run this, you can run Hellion, you can run Weaver's Call, and you can run Phoenix Dive, and you can absolutely just spawn a ton of little guys to annoy your enemies with in PvP. I featured a build that showcased this exact functionality. I think it's fun. It's a unique little synergy that is only possible on Prismatic because on Arc it's not as unique. Moving on to Speaker's Sight. This is the guy that Boots of Assembler told you not to worry about. So Speaker's Sight is you throw down your healing grenade and it becomes a healing turret that shoots you and nearby allies 5 or 6 times. It also heals a little when you touch it the first time, and I think this goes for everybody who touches it. So not bad. The secondary effect says curing your allies occasionally spawns orbs of power. What this doesn't clarify is this is all healing. Any way that you can heal your allies, healing rifts, cure on Red Death, the new healing support frame auto rifle from the Pale Heart. Anything you can think of that would heal your enemies normally, anything that would trigger Ember of Benevolence is going to work towards generating orbs for this exotic. Now in PvE, that's nice, but it's not super impactful because it's pretty easy to generate orbs in PvE. But in PvP, that's a different story. Even if you're not getting a ton of super energy from these orbs, you can get your surge mods up and running. You can get your ability regain mods up and running on your class item to get your grenade back quicker. Very, very good exotic. Fun in 6s. Probably pretty good in trials. I recommend checking this one out. Felwinter's Helm. In a similar situation to how Necrotic Grip didn't really find a home until Strand came around, I feel like Felwinter's Helm could find a home on Prismatic, where it's not the best option on any other subclass. It could find a home in Prismatic because you have access to the triple lightning surge arcane needle kind of thing, and you're getting debuffs that you wouldn't be able to apply super easily otherwise. I would keep a lookout for this helm on Prismatic. It's worth using. Finally, moving up to Fantastic, we have Metaiodoxia. This is an exotic that does everything. So it has 4 major effects. Number 1, if you land all 3 arcane needles on a target, they will emit a big suspending explosion around them. Pretty decent. It's good against unstoppables in a pinch. Number 2, if you land an arcane needle on anything, it will emit a smaller suspending explosion when they're killed. Now, the interesting thing about this is it's not just on kill. You're marking them with the melee. So for a little while after you hit them with it, you still have time to kill them and trigger that detonation. This also means that you don't need to land all 3 in order to get suspend out of this exotic. So again, good. Number 3, killing suspended targets grants you melee additional melee regeneration. It's light. It's decent. It's nothing to write home about, but it's nice to have. And number 4, and the really most important part about this exotic, in my opinion, is it makes your arcane needles anti-barrier. I did test this. It's an instant anti-barrier crack, like Second Chance. If you go into GMs and use this on a barrier champion, it will instantly pop that barrier. This is incredibly useful because that means that this exotic alone gives you access to stunning both barriers and unstoppables. And on Prismatic, you have access to Bleak Watcher. So you have all 3 stuns without needing to use any weapon mods, which means you can use whatever weapons you want. That is insanely impactful for Grandmaster Nightfalls. So if you are an endgame level player or somebody who's looking to get into endgame, I implore you to look into using this exotic because it is going to make your life a hell of a lot easier when you're dealing with champions. And then also we have Solipsism here. So here's the thing with this bond. I think that most permutations of this bond and most perks on the bond are pretty bad. Basically, all of these exotics listed down here and the outplayed by exotic class item tier are not that great, even on the exotic class item. But there are some good combinations. My main combinations that I'm looking at are something like Osmiomancy plus Verity's Brow, or Apotheosis Veil plus Stardew Scales. Specifically, that last one is going to be the one that most Warlocks are looking for because it gives you the best super DPS that you're going to get on Warlock. So, yeah, the bond's good. There's a lot of rolls on it. I wish you luck in finding the one that you want. Get out there, get those Dual Destiny missions those Dual Destinies missions done. Find a friend, have some fun. Learn how to read an analog clock. And get your shiny new class item. And then at the top tier, we have 4 exotics that are good, but are generic and don't really get anything from Prismatic with one small exception. So Aeon is it's just a generically good exotic that's been good in endgame content for a while now because it lets you generate a lot of heavy ammo, and there are some people that run all 3, and then you can get all 3 benefits. Good exotic. Doesn't really play into what you're running in terms of your subclass. Transversive Steps. This has been a PvP staple for a long time. It's just good. Same with Ophidians. PvP staple. Apotheosis Veil. Astrocyte Verse has been arguably the best Warlock PvP exotic for a little while now. And now that you can use Blink with any combination of abilities on Prismatic, I think it kind of unquestionably is the best choice. In Destiny PvP, movement is tantamount to being able to win, and Astrocyte Verse makes your movement better, and now you can use this with combinations like Blink and Phoenix Dive to really pull off some crazy movement against your enemies. So yeah, I think this is absolutely worth using. And that's the tier list. If you have any questions, if you disagree about where I place some of these exotics, if you have information about some functionality that I maybe miss, feel free to let me know, and I will follow up in the comments or with an adjustment to the tier list.